I am excited because this video is all about decimal division, and decimal division is so much fun. So buckle up because this is going to be a super fun video. So decimal division is very similar to just normal division with whole numbers. We just have to add in another step by placing the decimal point. So as I go through these steps, I'm going to assume that you already know how to divide using this algorithm. So I'm going to go through those steps kind of quickly. So if you aren't quite sure, you'll need to probably practice just normal division with whole numbers on your own. So anyway, let's get into division with decimals. So when we are dividing with decimals, we need to make sure that the number that we're dividing by, the divisor, this is called, on the outside of the little house, we need to make sure that this is a whole number. So if we have any decimals, we need to get rid of them. And to get rid of them, this is what we do. We move the decimal point until we have a whole number. So there, we moved it 2 times to the right, and now we have a whole number. So moving it 2 times to the right is like the same as multiplying it by 100. So if we could think about division as like a fraction. I would have a fraction that would look like this. So just like with fractions, if I multiply the bottom by something, I need to multiply the top by the same thing. So in this case, on the outside, I moved the decimal 2 times to the right, which would be the same as multiplying it by 100. So then I need to do the same on the inside. Whatever I do on the outside, I do the exact same thing on the inside. 2 to the right on the outside, so then 2 to the right on the inside. And then I have my new problem. I can take this decimal here, and I'll just go straight up and draw it up here. So when I have my answer, that will be where my decimal goes. So now we just divide like normal. So I'm now thinking of this as 4 wholes. How many times does 4 go into 3? Well, it can't. So how many times does 4 go into 39? Well, I know that 4 times 9 is 36. So if 4 times 9 is 36, and I take that away from 39, I'd be left with 3 in the end. I can write a 3. Then I bring down my next number, which is an 8. So I think, how many times does 4 go into 38? Well, same thing, 4 times 9 would be 36. So now I do 38 minus 36 gets me 2. I would have 2 left over in the end. So in this case, when I'm dividing, I did not end up with a 0 at the end. So I can actually keep going, and this is how I would do that. Right now, here's my number on the inside. If I add a 0 to the end, that doesn't change anything about it. I can add as many zeros as I want after the decimal, and the value of that number does not change. So if I go through and I bring down all of my numbers, and I'm still not left with 0 in the end, I can keep putting zeros at the end of this number until I finally find the end of it, where the decimal stops. So let's keep doing that by adding zeros. So added a 0, bring it down. Then I think, how many times does 4 go into 20? Well, it's exactly 5 times. 4 times 5 is 20. So if I took 20 away from 20, I would have nothing left over. So now I have nothing left over, no more numbers to bring down, so I'm done. In the end, my answer would be 99 5/10. Okay, here's another problem to try. 16 2/10 divided by 8/100. So quickly before we start, let's just pay attention to how I said that. I said 16 and 2/10 divided by 8/100. If I were to write this out horizontally from side to side, I would write it like this: 16 and 2/10 divided by 8/100. Whatever is on the inside, I write first, and I say first, and then the outside, the divisor, I say second, and I write it second. When I think about if I see a problem like this, and I need to think, how do I write it like this? To remember this. Inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. This first number goes on the inside of the house. The second number goes on the outside. Okay, that was just my side note before we get started. So this one we're going to work on together. So write this problem down on a piece of paper, and we're going to walk through it together. So first, see if you can figure out, how do we make this a whole number? What do we have to do? Hopefully you started moving the decimal to the right 2 times. So if I move the decimal to the right 2 times on the outside, how many times will I draw it to the right on the inside? Hopefully you started drawing 2 spaces to the right, your decimal. So I'm noticing that I have an empty space right here. If you ever have an empty space like this after moving your decimal over, you can fill it in with a 0 like that. All right, now we're going to start dividing. So we think, can 8 fit inside of 1? No. 8 does fit inside of 16 though. See if you can figure out how many times. Hopefully as you were figuring it out, you thought that 8 goes into 16 2 times. And notice how I'm thinking of the number 16. The last digit of that number is the 6, so I wrote the 2 exactly above the 6. Be very careful how you write your numbers up here. Make sure you put them in the exact right spot. So 8 times 2 is 16. How much would be left over? Nothing. Then I bring down the 2. I think, how many times does 8 go inside of 2? See if you can figure that out and write it up here. Hopefully you know that 8 does not fit inside of 2, so I would have 0. Notice how I carefully wrote the 0 right above the 2 because that's the last number I brought down. So 8 does not fit inside of 2. 8 times 0 is 0. If I take away 0 from 2, I would have 2 left over. Now I can bring down my 0. I think, how many times does 8 go inside of 20? See if you can figure that out now. Hopefully you thought 8 times 2 is 16, and that is as close as we can get. So above this 0, it's the last digit that I'm looking at, I will write the 2. And that would be 16. So I think, what would be left over if I took away 16 from 20? Hopefully you wrote down 4. Now I'm noticing I have no more numbers to bring down, but I don't have 0 left over. I still have a remainder. So see if you can remember from the slide before, what do we do if this is the case? We don't end in a 0. We're going to add zeros after the decimal point because we know that does not change our answer. Adding 0.0 does not change the value at all. So I can bring down another 0. How many times does 8 go inside of 40? 5. And 8 times 5 is 40. So 40 minus 40 would be 0. I have nothing left over and no more numbers to bring down, so I'm done. The only thing I need to think of now is where to put my decimal in my problem. My decimal is here now, so I'm going to draw it straight up right there. So in the end, my answer is going to be 202 5/10. Here are now 4 practice problems for you to try. So you're going to pause the video and solve them, and when you think you have your answers, you can play the video again to check your work. Go ahead and pause the video now. So here are now 4 problems for you to try on your own. So you're going to pause the video and solve them, and when you think you have your answers, you can play the video again to check your work. Go ahead and pause the video now. These are the 4 answers that you should have had: 22, 823, 202 200ths, and 30 2500ths. If you got any of these wrong, compare your work to mine and see if you can figure out where you made your mistakes. Lastly, we are now going to talk about word problems where we have to use decimal division. Here's an example problem. Sam makes 9 4/10 cups of soup. He pours the soup into equal-sized bowls that each hold 2 3500 cups of soup. How many bowls did he pour the soup into? So we are trying to figure out how many times 2 3500 fits inside of 9 4/10. If we're doing a problem where we are trying to see how many times one number fits into the other, we are going to be using division. So I'm doing 9.4 or 9 4/10, and I'm figuring out how many times 2 3500 fits inside. So I'm doing 9 4/10 divided by 2 3500. So to solve this, I'm going to make my little house, and I need to think inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside. This one goes on the inside, 9 4/10, and the other goes on the outside, 2 3500. So my first step, I need to make this number on the outside. I need to make it a whole number. I moved it 2 to the right, so I will do the same on the inside, 2 to the right, fill in with a 0, bring my decimal straight up. Okay, now let's do our division. So I have 235 going into 940. So I can think about 23 and 94 to give myself an idea of what it could be. Well, I know that 2 goes into 9 4 times. 23, 94, yeah, maybe 4 times. I'm just going to try 4 and see what happens. So I'm looking at the whole number 940, so the 4 would go above the 0. Let's try it and see. 235 times 4, 5 times 4 is 20, 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2, 14. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And so 940, what do you know? It's the same as what we have over here. So I would have nothing left over. And because I have nothing left over in the end, I have no more numbers to bring down. I'm done, actually. So all I need to do is write my answer using the correct label. So in the problem, it's asking for how many bowls. My answer is 4. So it would be 4 bowls as my final answer. To end this video, I have one more word problem for you. You're going to try this on your own, and just like normal, you'll pause the video and solve. When you think you have your answer, you can play the video again to check your work. Go ahead and pause the video now. In the end, the answer that you should have gotten is 12 nights. Make sure you have your label as well. If you did not get this correct, check your work, compare it to mine, and see what I did in all these steps and how I got my answer, and see if you can fix your mistakes. So that is the end I have for this video to practice decimal division. If you think you need more practice with decimal division, you could definitely just make up some of your own problems. Just make up some random decimals and divide them. And then in the end, you can check them with a calculator. So, but I'm hoping after this video you feel a little bit better with decimal division.